They don't see it.
Yeah. That's what he's saying right now. Some are it's the same book.
It's the same Jesus, right?
Okay, everybody got find a seat. We're going to get started.
Yeah.
Hope everybody's having a great morning. See everybody just hanging out, talking, catching up, saying y'all. So go on, remain standing when you get to your seats. We're going to start off with 10,000 feet.
Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh Lord, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing Your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. You're rich in love and You're slow to anger. Your name is great and Your heart is kind. For all Your goodness I will keep on singing. 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship Your holy name. Never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. I'll worship your holy name. Worship your holy name.
Okay, you can be seated for the next song. Yeah, the song goes 429 in each gallery. Okay, so get our hearts ready for the Lord's Supper. King of my life, I crown thee now. Thine shall the glory be. Lest I forget thy four-crowned brow, lead me to Calvary. Lest I forget Gethsemane, lest I forget thine agony, lest I forget thy love for me, lead me to Calvary. Show me the tomb where thou wast slain, tenderly mourned and wept. Angels in rows of light array, guarded thee whilst thou slept. Lest I forget Gethsemane, lest I forget thine agony, lest I forget thy love for me, lead me to Calvary. Let me like Mary through the gloom come with a gift to thee. Show to me now the empty tomb. Lead me to Calvary. Lest I forget Gethsemane, lest I forget thine agony, lest I forget thy love for me, lead me to Calvary. May I be willing, Lord, to bear daily my cross for thee, even thy cup of grief to share. Thou hast borne all for me. Lest I forget Gethsemane, lest I forget thine agony, lest I forget thy love for me, lead me to Calvary.
Brian.
Wow, guys, it's good to be back. Brothers and sisters, as many of you guys know, my wife and I, we've been out of town for the past 2 weeks, traveling, going to a conference, seeing my wife's sister and brother-in-law, going to a wedding, but it's good to be back. I was encouraged to hear about Vanessa's baptism while we were out of town, really encouraging. Want to give a special hello to Lorraine, watching at home. I know Alex is fellowshipping with her, watching with her this morning. You know, if this is your first couple times with us, my name is Brian Mackey. My wife is Abby. She's over with the kids this morning, but we got the privilege of leading our church here. And so it's, again, it's good to be back.
Amen.
So welcome to church. I do want to give a special thank you to anyone who took on extra responsibilities while we were gone, additional roles, anything you did. Thank you so much. It means a lot, but it's also like, it just shows what the church should be about. Not dependent on any one person, but a group together serving God. And it was really awesome. So, I'm going to get to communion in a little bit. I want to give you guys my top 3 highlights of my conference experience. It's probably different from everyone. I can tell you for sure, mine is very different than most. But I'll start with number 3 and work my way down to number 1. So my top 3rd favorite part about this conference was a specific class I went to. Well, that's the conference. But Sean Wooten did a class called Christ, Who Is Your Life. And Sean Wooten leads this team of missionaries called Revive. And 2 E's are capitalized because it's Revive Eastern Europe. It's really encouraging what they've been doing. But in his lesson, he just shares so much about how God has perfect timing. Perfect plans. And so I'm really excited. This Wednesday, we're actually going to watch that class for our midweek. So come back 7 p.m. here. Number 2 was this.
God sing it to me.
Cut it out right before you could hear me sing. But this was awesome because this wasn't the normal worship. The worship, this conference was just epic. But this was a 25-minute segment. Abby and I snuck into what was called the Forever Faithful track, which was supposed to be more for my parents' age. And so we snuck in there because they were doing a 25-minute a cappella hits from the church from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And it was incredible. You know, the Macintoshes got up and sang, and it was just blow away. They also, during that portion, it was the kickoff to that track of their conference. So at one point, they had everybody stand up, and then just kind of was like, all right, if you've been a Christian less than 20 years, sit down. That was their starting number, 20. They got all the way up to like 56, I think. And it was really, really inspiring. And then just a great class. So that was pretty epic. But my favorite thing, very specific to me, but my little sister got engaged. Now, I don't actually have a little sister, but I consider Jessica one of my little sisters. And the reason is because when I moved to Spokane to lead their college ministry in our family of churches, our ministry consisted of 5. It was me and 4 other women. And it was really interesting. But we decided to go to campus a few days before the semester started. And I convinced them to start throwing the Frisbee with me. And so I was out there throwing the Frisbee, and strongly not encouraged by the 2 freshman sisters in our campus ministry, I start yelling at this young lady who is walking by the field behind the library where we were throwing. I convinced her to abandon all hopes and desires of finding out where her classes are going to be. I convinced her to come play with us. 6 months later, she becomes a Christian, gets baptized. And so if you go to the next slide, I got to reach out to her, see her baptism, see her baptize actually the future wife of one of my groomsmen. And then Abby and I were actually there when this couple started dating. And then to see them get engaged, I'm going to be honest, all three of my top three, I cried. It was a very emotional conference for me. But it was just so cool. And, I think this moment really encapsulates what this conference and what conferences are really supposed to be about. Reuniting with brothers and sisters, seeing family who you know and who you don't know. And it was just really awesome. And I feel like I need to apologize to you guys for not pushing you guys enough to go to the conference. I'm going to change that next conference, and we're going to try to all make it because it was incredible. And so I do have a special treat, though, for you guys today. We are bringing a little bit of the conference here because my great friends Shane and Victoria are actually in town. They went to college with me. They were actually leaders in my campus ministry when I was a youngling. I call her Vicky. You go by Victoria now. Vicky is like an older sister to me. In my first probably 2 years of being a Christian, she probably had more influence over my journey, or tied with the most influence over my journey compared to anybody else. She really helped me out a lot, just guided me through a tremendous amount. Shane was at another college down the road, Radford University. He was being trained up to then go off and do what they've been doing for the past 10 years, and that's be serving on the mission field. Shane and Vicky have been in Stockholm, Sweden for the past 10 years, leading our college ministries, and then over the past, 2 years now, they have gotten asked to lead the church out in our sister church in Stockholm. And so it's really inspiring what you guys have done. I mean, it was inspiring for me in college to see you guys. Neither one of them knew the language. I will say Vicky is very proficient in learning languages. Shane, I have no idea how good you were before going. Vicky did try to teach me Spanish before I took an internship in Peru once. It was a disaster. She was a great teacher. I was a terrible student, but that was kind of college for me. And so, but it's been very inspiring to see you guys go, to watch you guys from afar, and to see you guys now lead the church, and grateful to have you guys speak to us this morning. And so, as I said, I was going to get to communion in a little bit. So if you guys could flip over to Colossians 1, but before Shane and Victoria come on up, I wanted to share and lead us in a small thought for communion. For most of the conference, at least the leadership conference, we were in the book of Colossians. And it was really inspiring. It was really powerful, just being able to almost look at the themes in the book of Colossians. And I don't know if this was intentional by the speakers, but the theme that stuck out to me the most was death. Not the most pleasant theme, but in our case, it's actually extremely pleasant. So in Colossians 1, in verse 19, it says, "For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether things on earth or things in heaven, by making peace through his blood shed on the cross. Once you were alienated from God and were enemies in your minds because of your evil behavior. But now he has reconciled you by Christ's physical body through death to present you holy in his sight, without blemish and free from accusation. And then later on in chapter 3, verse 3, it says, "For you died, and your life is now hidden with Christ in God." And again, this theme of death, first Jesus' death, but then his death allowing us to have our own death. It's just so prevalent throughout Colossians. Now it is preceded with the life that Jesus came back, and our new life that we get to now live. And it was stopped to me, I think, in a way that hadn't before. And maybe this is why. There was an interesting discussion I overheard at the conference. Kind of a bunch of preachers were talking, and they were like, talking about preaching styles. And whether you preach in a style of know, do, or feel. And what does your audience kind of take away from your speaking? And it was really intriguing as a preacher to kind of consider that. And typically, I think we would jump to say, oh yeah, our family of churches leans typically in the do, but the discussion actually led to, we probably lean more into the no, and therefore we then go do because we know. Now all three are great, but for me, at the conference, it was a time where I got to really feel the statement of Christ died and was raised so that we can die and have new life. Do you know that? Do you do that? Do you take action upon that? Then do you also feel it? This morning as we take communion, I just want you to ponder that. Do you know, do you feel the concept, the truth that Christ died and was raised, allowing each one of us to have now died and be raised to this new life? Let's pray and take communion. Father God, thank you so much. God, we are grateful for just your plans. God, your plans are so perfect, and your plan that we just get to almost imitate Jesus and everything he did is wonderful. Especially the idea and concept that we get to imitate, and because of his death and burial and resurrection, we get to have that personally in our own life. That we are no longer who we used to be or have to be who we used to be, but we are a new creation with Jesus, with your Son, and his perfection, his righteousness upon us. And that's how you view us, God. We're so grateful for that. I pray that each one of us will know, do, but also feel this idea, this concept, this, not just concept, this truth in our life this morning. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Amen.
Hello everyone, my name is Destiny. I'm just going to be praying for our offering, and we do have trays that will be passed, and we also have where you can give online on Tithely, and that's linked on our website. That's how you want me to give. All right. Dear God, thank you so much just for every blessing that you've given us. I don't think there's anyone in this room that can say that you haven't done something for them in their life. Haven't shown them some love in some way. God, I just pray that you can help us to give with our whole hearts, that you can help to bless the offering, to continue to support this church and the poor, God. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, while those trays are being passed, I'm going to go through the announcements. So we have a midweek service here at 7 p.m. on Wednesday. Let's see the next one. And then we have a picnic in the park, and that'll be Friday, 6 p.m. We'll have volleyball set up unless it's raining, and then in which case we'll figure something else out to do while eating together. And that'll be still Bushmaster Park, North Ramada, where we've been meeting. And then we have the Outward Singles Retreat coming up in almost a little less than 2 weeks. So please sign up, singles, if you haven't. It's $70. It includes lodging, and we're going to provide breakfast. That's 19th through the 21st. And then for everybody else, we'll be having Sunday service at Camp El Nathan. And that will be at 10 a.m. So it'll be an hour earlier than we're used to meeting. Please come and join us. We'll have a really good lesson. And we're going to actually have a guest speaker from LA, Kenny. So that'll be something cool to look forward to. All right, and then one last one is we are having the Southwest Singles Retreat, and that'll be in Las Vegas. I don't think we have a slide. November 4th through 6th. The registration prices increase on the 21st, so I just want to get that out here now. That is $120. So we'll be going to $140 at the end of the month. So just start preparing for that now. So thank you.
So go stand on up. We have one more song before we begin the lesson. If you have a song book, it's page 367. If you don't, then you'll have to guess the lyrics until we put them on the screen.
All right.
Okay. So it's going to be a hold you God's a changing hand. Okay. Time is filled with transition. Not a word who can stand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Trust in Him who will not leave you. Whatsoever years may bring, if by earthly friends forsaken, still more closely to Him cling. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Covet not this world's vain riches that so rapidly decay. Seek to gain the heavenly treasures, they will never pass away. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Hold to God's unchanging hand. When your journey is completed, if to God you have been true, fair and bright the home in glory, your and
unchanging hand. Hold to God's unchanging hand. Build your hopes on things eternal. Hold to God's unchanging hand.
Morning, Shane.
Good morning, everyone. All right, that's great. I'll try and not knock that over. So, as Brian so generously introduced us, saying very nice things about my wife, which are all true. He also said some very nice things about me, which may or may not be true. So, I was 20 minutes away in my campus ministry. So we went to the university to meet Vicky. And it was probably for Brian's best that I was 20 minutes away. But we are so excited to be here. So we are together here with family. So my mom and my dad and my mom's cousin are there in the back. And of course our 9, soon 10-month-old baby girl is there. So my 2 sisters live in South Dakota. And so my family's in Virginia, we're in Sweden, so my poor mother is like, how do we get these people together? So Flagstaff, it was, and what an amazing place this is. I mean, when you come somewhere as a guest, you always have to find some nice things to say. Some places you have to reach a little harder than others, but not here. What a beautiful place. So like most things in life, things are better when my wife is involved, so Vicky's gonna share things here.
I just wanted to introduce us a little bit so that you guys can get to know us. We're Shane and Vicky. We're both originally from Virginia, and 10 years ago we moved out to Sweden to help the church in different roles. And we started with the youth, and I was originally only going to be there for a year. I was going to move back and get my master's degree, and then it turned into 10 years very, very quickly. And so as Brian mentioned, we currently lead our church there, which is such a privilege and a joy, and we feel very, very grateful to have that role and to serve in a more broader way, maybe. And we got married in 2018. It's coming very soon on our 4-year anniversary. And we worked together for 5 years before we liked each other. And if you'd like to, if you have anybody in your life that maybe you don't see eye to eye with, we would love to help you. This is our baby, Alma. She's about to turn 10 months old. Grandma's gonna do a little Lion King. She likes to wave, so if you see her, you can give her a wave. Our church in Stockholm, we're about 170 people now, and we are mainly in Stockholm, and we have an hour north and an hour south, 2 groups there that we work very closely with. And we're hoping to see more cities have some churches, and we're very close amongst the other Nordic countries. So during the sermon, Shane and I will both be sharing a little bit more about our lives, the life just in Sweden, and what our church is like there.
Amen. You can, well, it's sunny outside. You can be turning to John chapter 2. So in Stockholm, we've been preaching through the book of John, and Brian asked me, if I was in town, if I'd be willing to preach, and I of course said, of course, there's so many inspiring things in the book of John that we've been discovering. And that's one of the things that we like to do, at least in our church in Stockholm, is to just pick a book of the Bible and just to plow straight through and see what God wants to say, as opposed to maybe what the preacher would want to say. I think the Word of God is a little bit smarter than I am. But you guys can also bear with me, because one of the things I didn't really think about is that all of my notes are in Swedish. So for anyone here who's bilingual, you know that reading one language and then going directly into another isn't always the easiest thing. But we'll be in John chapter 2, starting in verse 1. And we're going to jump into a pretty famous passage where Jesus turns water into wine. And this miracle, this huge event that happens, takes place in the middle of, what was supposed to be an amazing party. But the party kind of got ruined. And I don't know about you guys, if you've ever been somewhere where a party either got ruined or maybe you're at a dinner party and someone just comes in and they say the wrong thing at the wrong time and it gets quiet. And you're like, how do we, or maybe you were that person. But it was somewhat of a similar situation here where the wine runs out. But I think one of the things that we can learn, and that I think I've learned, and hopefully all of us can be able to take with us, is that I believe if Jesus was forced to summarize the Christian life in one word, I would say celebration. The Christian life is meant to be a celebration, even in the midst of hard times, even in the midst of circumstances which aren't always easy.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we get to live a celebratory life. John chapter 2, verse 1, we'll read here. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Dear woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My time has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." So they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so, and the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." This, the first of his miraculous signs, Jesus performed at Cana in Galilee. He thus revealed his glory, and his disciples put their faith in him. This story, this historical account, reminds me a little bit of a story that I had actually heard somewhat recently. So you guys have 64 east and west here. So the even-numbered interstates, of course, travel east to west. And so we actually have 64 where I grew up. And so there was a priest one time who was driving on 64, and his driving was a little bit shaky. So a police officer pulls him over, and he taps on the window, rolls down the window. He sees the little collar, and he says, "Father, have you been drinking today?" He says, No, I haven't been drinking." He says, "Well, why do I smell wine in the car?" He says, "Jesus Christ, he did it again." Let's sink in. Okay, one or two hours. There's a few things I love about this passage. I love the description, just the simple wording, the simple phrasing that Jesus and his disciples were invited to the party.
Yes. Yeah.
Think about what that says about who Jesus was. In this time, in this culture, big weddings was the way to go. And even now, from many Middle Eastern cultures, there's a large Middle Eastern population in Stockholm. So, I've interacted with a bunch of different people from a bunch of different cultures. But I remember when we were getting married, me and Victoria, and I told one of my buddies who was from Syria, I said, "Yeah, we're gonna have like 100 people at our wedding dinner." And he was like, 100 people? That's nothing. Are you kidding me? Like 400 or 500 people. Then we're talking. Okay, so the big parties over the course of many days, and of course the wine was supposed to be able to be there during that whole time. But even so, still, it's not like everyone gets invited. There was maybe that one person in the neighborhood, that one kind of little bit crazy person, a little bit shaky. You don't want that person that's going to ruin the mood. But that wasn't who Jesus and his disciples were. These were the guys that of course, we're gonna have these guys at our party. And I think that says a lot about who Jesus was, and perhaps what our picture of the Christian life should be. What does it say to you about your picture of Jesus, and perhaps your own Christian walk?
Good question.
I think the fact that Jesus was able to say some very tough things, some very, maybe what was perceived as harsh things, and at the same time, still be the person who allows the party to keep going. It says so much about this description of Jesus that he came full of both grace and truth. And he could strike that perfect balance when we can so often lean and sway in one direction or the other. But Jesus, both aspects, both parts of his character were there 100%.
Yeah.
And the way that turning water into wine is described here, I think is really interesting. Often in the Gospels, these different miracles are described just as that, as miracles. But this is described as a sign. And it is a different word in the original language. If you think about a sign is meant to point to something greater. A sign is meant to guide you in a certain direction. And so this was Jesus' first sign, his first major supernatural deed that was going to point to something big in the future. And if you were to think about, a first impression that you would want to have, perhaps, I don't know, let's say first day at a job, right? You have your interview, you get there, and then now you're going to meet all your new coworkers, and maybe first day of classes, whatever it may be. But think about how well thought out your outfit is. Think about how well thought out, it's not that day that you forget to shave. It's not that day where you just kind of like bring your toothbrush in your bag. I'll just do it. No, not that day, because it's a day of first impressions. And so Jesus, this moment where everything kind of collapses, he sees the need in front of him, and at first he says, Mom, it's not my time, not right now. But then he realizes, no, perhaps this is divine providence. That this is the moment. This is the first thing that people are going to remember about me. And it says his glory was revealed in this moment. He showed his true self. He showed who he really was, his identity. There was a master of the feast. The master of the feast, the same way we have a wedding planner today. Well, this person, it was their job to make sure that the food and the wine aren't going to run out. We've all heard that phrase. You had one job. This was this guy's one job. Lo and behold, the wine runs out, and in steps Jesus and says, you know what? No party is going to stop on my account. And by the way, I'm the true master of the banquet. I'm the one really in charge here. And these stone jars, I think it says 20 to 30 gallons each. We're in Europe, so we speak metric. This was about 600 liters that these all would be filled with water, which were for the Jewish, what is it in English? Their cleansing rites. Yeah, their purification. And so this was an application of the law of Moses that, wash your hands, before you go and eat your food. So all of the guests would have likely come and been washing their hands. And so these stone jars would have also served as a reminder of something that was a duty, that you show up to the party, you wash your hands, you do what you're supposed to do. And for some people, maybe perhaps those things were a joyful occasion, all of the Old Testament law. But perhaps for other people, it felt more as a burden. Jesus steps in and he says, I'm bringing something even better. I'm bringing something that's even more of a celebration. And by the way, I think maybe sometimes we overlook this theological question, but I think it's actually a little bit of a difficult thing to grapple with, because 600 liters of wine, that's a lot of wine. That's a lot of wine. And you know, people sometimes even try to like make the argument that like, oh, wine was a little bit weaker at this time. But even the guy comes up and says, hey, normally when everyone's already a little bit tipsy, you know, they bring out the bad stuff, but now that people are there, there's even better stuff. So I don't really know what to say about that. I'm not saying that that's okay, but whatever the case, I think that shows something amazing about who Jesus was. That, man, far be it from me to stop the celebration. Far be it from me to stop the party. And I think there are some things before Vicky comes up and shares a little bit. Right here, I think we can also have maybe some things that can feel like a burden to us. Things that kind of feel like this is my list of to-dos. These are some things that I have to do, whereas maybe we've lost the joy in those things. You know, coming to church every Wednesday, every Sunday, the park on the Fridays. I love those things, but I've also been at a place where I felt like, okay, I have to go. I have to do this.
That's real.
Or even maybe in our own personal walks, in our own personal spiritual journeys, where we feel like, yeah, I know I should pray every day. I know I should read my Bible. I know I should be a light in my community where I am. I know I should, rather than I get to.
Yeah.
I get to do those things. Vicky's gonna share a little bit.
I did a little bit of math to give perspective. I know Shane was like, oh, we're using liters metric system. That would come out to, if you just picture a normal bottle of wine that you just get, this is 920 bottles of wine. That's what Jesus produced. They're like, oh, well, yeah, the generosity and the quality of that, yeah, you can pray about that, I guess. But I wanted to share about a friend of mine who has recently rediscovered her joy in Jesus. This kind of going from that mentality of like the burden and the duty, the musts, the shoulds, and that impact that it had on her faith. And then what really changed things for her. And now she has so much joy and refreshment in her relationship with God. She had grown up in the church and then eventually became a Christian as a teenager. And she at first was really enjoying her relationship with God. It was exciting, it was giving, it felt meaningful, it was fun. But after a while, she started to feel disappointment in the fellowship. She started to feel like there were things about the church she didn't like, where in the city she was living in. She felt like she was giving a lot and serving a lot and felt unappreciated and fruitless in that way. And she was feeling bored in her prayer and Bible reading. And so naturally she started to seek excitement again, wanting to feel that refreshment. But she did not seek it in God-centered ways. Things that normally would be totally innocent and natural and fine, like traveling and building friendships and just starting over and moving to a new place. And even though she was socializing with other Christians in that context, she became even more distracted and distant in her relationship with God. Because she wasn't really personally motivated for the things that would build that connection with God. She got to the point where she eventually moved home, but kept under the radar and didn't tell anybody that she was even back. And church started to go virtual, as it did all around the world, and nobody even knew that she was in her hometown, living in her mom's house. And not so long ago, she was visiting us in Stockholm. And I've known this girl since she was a teenager, and so she was coming to visit. And she heard a sermon that really convicted her. And the feeling that she had, the way she described it to me was like, I miss God. I miss thinking of God positively. I miss feeling like this was such a joy in my life. I miss that experience of like wow, this really means something for me, and this is important in my life. So she started to make some small decisions and some large decisions to try to refresh that joy and refine her way. Some of those small decisions were just to read and pray, like Shane mentioned, that even that can feel like I should, but so she really devoted herself. She found a good reading plan that would really help build her faith. She started to pray, and what she did was she started doing a reading plan about prayer so that she would have conviction about it, and she was determined not to just go through the motions, to really dig deeper in those things and find that inner motivation again. And it really, really changed how she started to see and think about things. So then she started to make some bigger decisions, and one of, among many, but one of the ones was that she picked out some women that she would grow close to, women that she knew would help keep God at the center of her life. Because she had really been avoiding a lot of those kinds of relationships and kind of made sure that she could keep distance so that she wouldn't have to, feel guilty or grow in her relationship. And those women have really, really helped her. She has a consistent time with them. She talks about her life. She can help them, and she feels needed. She feels useful. She's benefiting from their advice and input and the way they talk about the Bible with each other. And so she visited again not so long ago, and it was amazing to hear her talk about this newfound joy in her relationship with God and the way that she had really made Jesus the center of her life again. And the impact of both these small decisions and big decisions was enormous. It changed her friendships with people, how she let herself be influenced by them and who she let herself be influenced by. It changed that she could look back on past times that were really difficult, and now she sees them from like, wow, God was so faithful to me and so gracious. And that was not how she saw those hard times in the moment. But Jesus being really the center of her life again changed even how she saw really difficult times. Her newfound joy made her more resilient and useful for other people. And she has had so many bold conversations with people, and she has such a heart for those now who she sees are where she was. And she's been really instrumental in trying to help them find this joy again as well. And it's just so inspiring to hear her talk about Jesus being fulfilling again in her life through putting herself in environments, relationships, and habits where he can be in the center and she can see him and experience him again in ways that previously she had really shut out.
Yes. There are, perhaps a couple things that come up for you. I don't know where everyone in this room is at in their faith, but maybe a couple elephants in the room. When you look at this account of Jesus turning water into wine and the Christian life being a celebration. So, for example, in Stockholm where we live, it's about 90 to 95% atheist. So if you were to take a straw poll of people in any room, easily 9 out of 10 aren't going to believe in God. And they're going to have various issues with that. There's all kinds of reasons where you can get into that. But at the end of the day, when a lot of my friends and some of my best friends who are Christians started out as atheists and not having any sort of belief. But they would read that, think water into wine. I'm a scientific modern person. This is made up, right? And I know perhaps some of us in the room were there, are there, have friends who are there. But I would just pose a question and pose a thought that if someone were to come and someone were to say, I am God in human form, it is in your best interest to listen to me. If you listen to me, if you hear what I have to say, you're going to get eternal life. You're going to get everything that you didn't even know you needed. What would your response to that person be? Prove it.
Yeah.
Who are you? Prove it.
Yeah.
And so, as we look at the historical person of Jesus, both what's in the Bible, but then even sources that are outside of the Bible, from the same time period, no one actually could deny or even tried to deny that Jesus couldn't perform miraculous signs. Rather, all these other sources, they attacked why he did them. They tried to say he was some sort of a dark sorcerer. They tried to say many different things about his identity. but no one actually tried to deny that he couldn't do these things. Pretty amazing. I love how a wedding party is one of Jesus's most common metaphors that he uses.
Yeah.
When he talks about the church's relationship to God, the bride and the groom.
Yeah.
When he talks about coming back for the final time, once again. It's like when the man comes to gather his fiancée and okay, now it's time for us to get married. Heaven, it's going to be like a wedding party.
Yeah.
Inviting people in. When we invite people to church, Jesus talks about it's like inviting people into a wedding banquet. When we meet God, we who are Christians, it's like that moment when, for those of us who are married, we know when you're standing there as the groom and your wife walks in the room for the first time. That's the image that's given to us by Jesus.
Yeah.
So really, the Christian life is meant to be an amazing celebration. It's a celebratory life that Jesus came to give us. But the second elephant in the room, and we'll start to round off here, we'll land the plane. How does this picture, the Christian life being one big celebration, how can we reconcile this with human suffering and hard times? And perhaps, I don't know, like I said, I would love to know all of you, but I don't. But I can imagine maybe even some of us in the room who are veterans became a Christian thinking that, okay, from here on out, it's going to be smooth sailing. And then you become a Christian, and not only does that not happen, perhaps some things get even harder after the fact. So how does this work together? Well, I think one of the points of this joy that even was happening in his very midst at this wedding party was the joy in deep fellowship, the joy of having a deep community. At this time, a wedding wasn't just about the couple themselves and their own happiness, but rather it was much more about strengthening the bonds of the community, creating a stronger community, creating a stable support system so that when hard times do happen, because they will, you're not alone.
Yeah.
And as we think about the Christian fellowship, are we contributing to that? Or are we only taking when we need it? And it's a question I have to ask myself. Vicky was going to share a little bit briefly here.
About strengthening bonds of community. Around International Women's Day every year, we often in our church host a Women's Day where we can invite women in our city to come and experience Christian relationships, to hear spiritual thoughts, to start to get a glimpse and an idea of maybe God could be relevant for my life, or to build the faith of those who already do believe in God. And this year, though, we did something different since it was our first major event after COVID. And we gathered all of the women in our church together. And something you need to know about Sweden is we have something called fika, which is where you socialize with somebody, you meet up, you have coffee and a little cake or a little cinnamon bun or something like that, and you talk and you hang out. And that's it's a great life that we have. That's a lot of my day is getting to meet with people, and it's pretty great. And so this year we decided to treat all of the women in our church and any friend they would want to bring to fika. And what we did was I shared some thoughts about transition, since all of us were going through many transitions in our lives. And we really talked about what it would mean to have faith in God in every stage of our lives. To be faithful for the long haul, and not just at the moment of our conversion maybe, or at the moment of our baptism, but to really, for the rest of our lives, no matter what comes, to be faithful to God and to have faith in Him. So what I did was I had all the women share, but what I did was so that we could build those strengthen those bonds of community by learning from one another. And I asked the question to the room that all the women answered, or many of them. I asked, how is God building your faith in the stage you're in right now? So we could hear from many different stages of life. Everyone from I just recently became a widow, to I am now caring for my aging parents, to my faith in the Bible just grew. That God's been helping me believe in it more. And such woman after woman answering that question. And it was a really powerful moment to learn from each other, to catch up on what has God been doing in our lives, and how can we use these relationships to continue to build our faith. And it lifted our eyes to a bigger picture, and it refreshed us to be together and to have these bonds of community over something so simple as coffee.
Just a second thought to round us out here. If you are experiencing problems, issues now that make it hard to grasp with an idea of the Christian life being one big celebration, if you're dealing with some things that are, perhaps deeper, perhaps COVID has affected some of us, it can be any number of things. I would encourage you, I would implore you to deal with those problems now by thinking about the future, meditating over the future that's ahead of you. To be able to process those problems now over meditating on what's ahead of us. And one of the things that I believe as Christians, we don't really think about enough is heaven. Is this eternal wedding banquet, this eternal party that Jesus has promised us. That's available to any one of us who would take that gift in the way that Jesus described it. To have faith, a true faith, to repent and to be baptized. And you're in, man. You're in that amazing, amazing wedding party. And I believe Jesus, even in that moment, he was probably even pondering his own future, knowing that in order for this to happen, I'm going to have to pay the price. I'm going to have to die. Yet he drank the cup of judgment so that we can drink a celebratory cup. Each and every one of us. The best thing that we can experience in this life, and sometimes, man, it's awesome. Like some of the moments that we have as a family with our baby girl, and when you're with really good friends, meeting up with friends at the conference, with family, people I hadn't seen for years. Like you're sitting there thinking like, oh man, I wish this could continue. But even that is nothing. It pales in comparison to what is awaiting us. Meditate on that the next time we feel like, I have to, I should. When we know deep down, I get to. I'm going to round off in Isaiah 25. And this was a prophecy written 1,000 years before the time of Jesus, talking about what Jesus would be able to do, what his life was going to lead to. Isaiah 25, verse 6, and we'll close out here. On this mountain, the Lord Almighty will prepare a feast of rich food for all peoples, a banquet of aged wine, the best of meats and the finest of wines. On this mountain, he will destroy the shroud that enfolds all peoples, the sheet that covers all nations. He will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. He will remove his people's disgrace from all the earth. The Lord has spoken. In that day they will say, surely this is our God. We trusted in him, and he saved us. This is the Lord. We trusted in him. Let us rejoice and be glad in his salvation. Let us rejoice. Thanks so much for listening to us. So great to meet all of you.
Well, thank you, Shane and Victoria. I know why Brian likes you guys. Just want to say something really quick. I actually appreciate that because of, I know I've shared with a lot everyone, the struggles that even being a disciple for so long, life isn't perfect. But one of the craziest things I was thinking about was I was able to lean on a lot of brothers and sisters to help me get through it. I'm still kind of going through it, but one thought that crossed my mind was, it's so crazy how people who don't have God in the fellowship, how much more worse it is for them to go.
Yeah.
And, you know, honestly, you know, just even the fellowship, you know, we can honestly just forget that it is a party, and we can also forget that people are in our lives that are willing to help us.
Yeah.
Are very empathetic, and out of everybody I've shared my struggles with, I've only had one person come up and say, dude, suck it up and deal with it. You know? Everybody else is more empathetic, I'll give you that, but, and even if you are just visiting, you know, there's a reason why you came today. There's a reason why, you know, you decided to come to church today. So, you know, it's just awesome to know that we have a God who loves us and cares for us, and really wants to reach out to each and every one of us. So, if you're visiting today, just go and, you know, give us one and open up the Bible and learn more about this God who just wants to have every one of us to have a party, to have like an exciting way. So let's go and stand up. We're going to finish off with one last song. I Feel Good. And it's on page 714 if you have a song. Okay. I feel good, good, good. I feel good, oh yes, I will. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel good, 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 good. I feel love, love, love. I feel love, oh yes, my Lord. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel love, 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 love. I feel joy, joy, joy. I feel joy, oh yes, my Lord. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel joy, 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 joy. I feel peace, peace, peace. I feel peace, oh yes, my Lord. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel peace, 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 peace. I feel good, good, good. I feel good, oh yes, my Lord. Because there's something about the Spirit of Jesus that makes me feel good, 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 good. We're dismissed. Enjoy the rest.
Yeah, that's remind me of my